Hi, and welcome to PhD Career Stories podcast. This is Tina Persson from Malmö, Sweden, recording, and I have here today 4 people belonging to an association called EATRIS. And it is a masterclass, I would say, a roundtable discussions around careers and possible careers that I know many of our followers would be extremely very highly interested in learning from. So the topic is career perspectives for scientists 2023 and beyond. And just a short background about EATRIS. EATRIS is a non-profit European research infrastructure for translational medicine, providing access to experts and facilities from, I think it's 144 top academic centers across Europe. Did I get the numbers correct here? 144, or has it been added some more here?
I think there's another
Yes.
4 have gone on it, I think.
Yeah.
It's 148 now, Tina.
148, so it's steadily growing. It's fantastic. It's huge. It's a huge organization here. And just who do I have with me in this fantastic team here? I have David Morrow. You heard him here recently. He's a scientific program manager and a PhD. We have Patricia, and she's a scientific project manager, also a PhD. And then we have Alex, and Alex is a science and business developer, also with a PhD title. And then we have the man over the crowd, the director himself, also a PhD, and his name is Toni. So I will open up this round table here about careers, and I would like to start with you, David. I read about your background, and I noticed you started your career in United States. And just very shortly, American Heart Association, NIH, where you have been a funded principal scientist, and then you came over to Europe. Why did you make this jump, United States and Europe? I'm curious to learn that.
Well, I think when you're in a place 10 years, so you have the personal side, you have to make a decision if it's going to be your home and settle down. And I don't think it was a fit. Professionally, I think it had run its course because I'd gone down the traditional academic path up to about research professor level, had my own lab, but then I looked ahead and realized there was something missing for me. So that would put me on a different journey, and and then do an MBA and take both of those combinations of business and science and come back to Europe to see where else I could fit in.
What did you know about Europe before you came?
Oh, no, I live in Europe, so
You live in Europe?
I'm from Ireland. So I mean, there was a draw to be closer to family and to be back in Europe. I had no problems in America, but I did prefer to live in Europe and be close to everybody back in Ireland, of course.
So you were born in Europe, then went to United States, and then came back to Europe.
I did, yeah.
Yeah, I missed that part. But when you came back to Europe, what did you experience? Had you become a little bit American on the way? So what differences did you notice when you came back? Because this is what I hear from many of my coachees that, I went to Europe and then back to United States. It was different,
Well, it is. I mean, I would actually recommend and advise every scientist, if they could, to do a postdoc in the States because they do it very well. The institutions they have, the way they work, I think it was a fantastic advantage for me to do that. And I came back with a different skill set, a different way to work. And I think a lot of people say that they benefit from going to the US for a while, but then bringing that knowledge back to Europe. But it was a bumpy ride. I didn't go straight to EATRIS. I tried another job first in Spain, in Barcelona, which was a bit of a failure because it just wasn't a fit. But these things will happen, when you go a different career direction. And a lot of people listening today will experience that as well. When you switch directions, you're going to hit a few bumps. And I certainly did before I ended up very happy with these guys at EATRIS.
We're going to come back to that a little bit closer, the feeling of failure, because, it is important to come over them and say it's not a failure, it's a learning experience. But we will come back to that, David, here, because I would like to turn my face to you, Patricia, that you're from Bolivia, then a PhD in Barcelona, and then a small trip to industry and coordinating European Union. You have an extremely diverse background as I see it. So how did you end up at EATRIS with that package with you?
Yeah, thank you, Tina. Well, yes, I started my career in Bolivia where I obtained my bachelor in biology. But my curiosity, my scientific, also eager to learn um, mindset, that pushed me to look for an international PhD career. So I came to Barcelona to obtain my PhD, and then I had different professional experiences here, and I combined the private with the private industry and public research institutes. And I had the opportunity to acquire a lot of skills and knowledge. And my experience in managing European projects and coordinating large consortia, this gave me, let's say, the experience and the confidence to came into EATRIS, where I'm doing um, my job is about managing also European research projects, and I think that all my background and my experience in this field make me like a good and ideal candidate to work at EATRIS.
Yeah, as your combined background. But you say Bolivia and then PhD in Barcelona. Why Barcelona? From Bolivia to Barcelona. It could have been any other city in Europe or in America.
Yes, well, this is like I didn't select it by myself, Barcelona, because I was looking for different places, also in United States. But it was like, let's say, a lucky opportunity that was open at that time in Barcelona. And some colleagues of mine recommended me that there was a very good chemical engineering institute in Barcelona where there was a PhD position. So I applied for that, and that's it. I got
So it's a bit
accepted.
lucky, yeah, exactly. We apply and yeah, and then life happen and we take it from there,
Yeah, well, it was not easy to find a PhD position because I was trying to, as I said, to get a PhD position in United States or UK. But at the end, I was this was, yeah, like my fate, or I don't know how to call, but this opportunity at Barcelona and at this concrete institute was open at that time. And yeah, this was the door that was open for me. And yeah, since then my professional career and also my personal life changed since then.
Yeah, we come back to that. So now we have failure, we have faith. We have a lot to talk about here today. So let's see what we're now turning our face here to Alex. And Alex, when I read about, then I read Uruguay and then Paris doing PhD and then United Kingdom, Cambridge, and then industry in medical device. So of course, I'm super curious to hear how did you end up here at EATRIS?
You want it from the beginning?
Yeah, maybe the short story, shorten it down. But
Okay,
yeah, you have a fantastic background. So
I'll give you a short overview. I went to the French Lycée in Montevideo, and at the end of my baccalaureate, I was awarded a fellowship to study in Paris. So I did all my studies in Paris, including my PhD, and in neuroscience in the École Normale. And then I then went to Cambridge to do a long postdoc, um, trying to find further the explanation of the further the research into the topic I have scratched the surface to during my PhD. So it was a very, very interesting scientific journey. I very much enjoyed my career as a PhD student and as a postdoc. And at the end, I was curious to know how was the other side, how was to apply, how was to do science, applied science, and I wanted to go to the industry. I wanted to have a look at the pharmaceutical industry because a lot of my friends were in the pharmaceutical industry. It was a time where the industry was a bit in turmoil. It was known, the period was known as the patent cliff. So it was very difficult to get a job in the pharmaceutical industry, and that's why I took a side path and went into medical devices, working in microscopy, which is something I'm very passionate about as a scientist. And I enjoyed this time in my life. Working with microscopes and meeting different people doing, from a PhD or postdoc where you're very focused on your subject, then you expand your horizon and see what other people are doing. And then I took another slightly unusual path, and it was to go back to university, but this time as a student. So as a mature student, I went back to the lecture room and did a master. So I was the only one with a notepad and a pen. Everyone else had a computer taking notes. So it was a bit of a shock to the system. And the students thought I could be their mother. So that was another shock to the system. But I very much enjoyed having young friends and being back in the university somehow. And after that, I got a few short things as consultancy and working in biotechs and startups. That was a very enjoyable time, and building on my knowledge on what the industry, the challenges, the finance of the whole ecosystem around translational medicine is. And I think it all crystallized coming to EATRIS, where everything comes together, both the industry, the research, and this desire to bridge in that gap that takes research into a product, into something that can benefit people.
Yeah. Is your career like Patricia? She said it was a sort of an accent, and for David, it was sort of coming back. Did you plan your career, or was it? How would you define it?
Yeah, I think I did plan it academically, but once you leave, academia is a linear path. There are not many branches. Once you leave academia, you find yourself bouncing different opportunities and following pretty much, as a sailor where the winds take you. And it's something that you learn, and you learn a lot, but perhaps a lot more than you will learn in a linear career with always doing the same and following funding after funding and etc. etc. You come out and then you meet different people that are very similar to you to some extent and very different as well, and it's very enriching.
Yeah, it's interesting what you say, linear thing, and I call it the bouncing opportunity that you call it. But it requires actually that you're open-minded then, Alex. So that's something else that we maybe bring on the table here coming up. And now we have Toni, the last man out here, but nevertheless an amazing career. For I understand it's United States and New York and Colombia, wasn't it? And then Spain, and you have moved sort of from being in scientific expert to policy making and innovation, and now also a leader. Director is, the leading position here. So the whole career, I guess, would take very long, but I would like if you could cite, some key things that led you to become a director of a team like EATRIS.
Yeah, that's interesting because I am the oldest one of this party, which means that my journey has been much longer than David, Alex, or Patricia. Okay, so to make a long story short, this is a young MD that was always interested in research. I saw in around 1980 something that I had the opportunity of learning more developing a PhD program. So I went to Columbia University in New York because I was very interested at that moment in the area of rare diseases, neuromuscular disorders. And it turns out that I landed in a place where there was an amazing opportunity for discovering new things about mechanisms of expression of this group of diseases. I was very lucky because there was this situation where you are at the right place and at the right moment. So I was in the middle of a couple of breakthroughs. I had the opportunity of publishing significant relevant papers. And that opened the door for me to come back to Spain, creating my own research group. And at some point, just for for some specific moment and for some coincidental situation, I had the opportunity of introducing myself into the policymaking world in the National Institute of Health in Spain, which is the institution that owns the research agenda in Spain. And just by chance, I had the opportunity of becoming the director. I became the director. And that opened another door, which was the door of the health system. Then I moved back to Barcelona and I was the CEO of one of the largest universities hospitals in Spain. And then the Spanish Minister of Health asked me to create the directorates for research in the Spanish ministry. I became the director. I created the research agenda for the Catalan Ministry of Health. And after 20 years of working in Spain in science and in policy making, suddenly I saw this opportunity of jumping to the European landscape because EATRIS opened the position of scientific director. I applied and then I started my European journey.
You started, and you say something here, being at the right time at the right moment. We call it luck. And it's we have this famous athlete Ingemar Stenmark. I don't know if you have heard about him, but when they say, you're so lucky, and he always said that,
Yeah.
it's interesting because the more I train, the more
Yeah.
lucky I become. So luck and being at the right moment at the right time. It might be a skill, Toni, that you have. Have you thought about that?
Yeah, I think this is something that we all acquire. I mean, luck is that condition that allows you to open your eyes to identify the right opportunity, right? And as you get older, I mean, this is a skill that you make it a little bit better. Yeah, no, but in that particular case, I was really, 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 really lucky. But I immediately saw that there was an opportunity for opening a new door, and I happily jumped there. One thing that I mean, for me, has been something very important. Is something that I'm happy to share this with you guys. My father always told me that one of the worst things that happen in your life is at the end of your journey to look back and then think, what would have happened if I had done? And I like just to experiment and to jump on things, sometimes in the middle of the darkness. But in my case, has been always a very positive outcome.
Yeah, of course it is, because it is what you do with it, usually. But I like to hang on that, Toni, and say here, because this is something, remember now it's a career podcast, and I coach a lot of clients in careers. I coach people in career and leadership, and particularly in career development, career transition. I sort of bump into that people are more afraid to fail than to succeed. And that is simply holding them back. And this is part of the risk taking, which I can hear, Toni, that you certainly were open minded, yes, but you were never afraid of taking a risk. So I would like to go back to David here and say, what risks would you say that you have taken that led you forward in your career?
Well, I mean, to be part of faculty in a medical center for 10 years, be well established, and then suddenly to decide to go a totally different route, do an MBA and come back to Europe and have a different career. Because as Alex said, the academic route is linear. It's kind of safe. You kind of work for yourself. You go after your grants. You fly your own flag. But to leave that behind and suddenly go into a completely different environment where you probably have managers over you, you're not comfortable after sitting in your own office for 10 years and really writing your own grants. And then suddenly you're in an office with 3 or 4 people going, what's this? So that was a massive risk. As I mentioned earlier, it took a while to get it right the first time. It was too much of a change. But you learn from it. But that is a risk, to basically just drop your path that you're doing very well on and go a different route altogether. But again, I would have no regret. I'm just happy. I am now who I work with and where I work and the direction I took, but it was scary for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I can hear you have courage. Courage to do something different apart from being expert in one field and then stepping out there and have the courage to learn something new. And we talk about the future here, that future skill, one of the most important future skills will be adaptability, for example. And connected to adaptability, of course, apart from emotional control or managing your emotions, being afraid to fail and etc., taking things personally, and so it is also to unlearn, because we talk a lot about learning things, but we talk about unlearning. And I'd like to hear from you, Patricia, unlearning. What would you say that you need to unlearn in order to learn new things?
Yeah, I think that under our current situation and the evolution of the technology and the world in we live, we have to be able to detect which are the new tools, the knowledge that will be useful for us for doing our job, and which other, let's say, past knowledge that it's not useful enough or not updated, like to discard or like to update. No, we are always updating. The tools that we are using are always updated. So there is a constant evolution, and this is something that we should be aware to be updated. Indeed, for my job, I always try to be aware and to look for the latest innovation news. I like to be updated about what's happening in the world, what's happening in science, and to use the most updated tools to be like a sophisticated professional. And indeed, there is. I read some time ago that the Zeta shape managers are the ones that are able to learn and unlearn, and these kind of profiles are the ones that are the most employable by industry. So yes, and this is a kind of manager that is useful, and this kind of manager is the one that is looked for the industry and in the workplaces.
No, that's important, because we know that PhDs, they work very hard and learn technical skills, because you talk about technical skills, and we're coming back to that every third year we have to relearn. And so that's also a very fast pacing world, but it's to unlearn technical tools that we have used is for sure extremely important. And I like to go back to Toni before I go back to Alex here, that since you've been in the career for so long, and I will ask maybe a more difficult question today when it comes to unlearning. Patricia talked about technology, and that we have to unlearn what we learned in the past to go into the future and actually get more information into our brain. Toni, what would you say were personality threats? If you say from you, if you're talking soft skills, I don't like that, but we can talk human skills, behaviors that you needed to unlearn to learn a new behavior to be where you are. Would you like to share that?
Yeah, it's quite interesting because I think that the main thing, you used a word before that for me is the key word when we talk about career development, which is adaptability. And can I introduce, can I share with you something,
Yes.
an anecdote that I think is relevant? Because for a few years, I've been conducting a coaching program for tenure track scientists in a large biomedical research institute in Barcelona, and I had the opportunity of being exposed to a large number of young scientists in different biomedical domains at different stages of their development. And it's interesting because I think that roughly I could classify kind of three types of approaches. One, people that had a very well planned development or prospective development of their career, people that were just, learning by doing, let's say, and not having a previous plan, and people that their focus was to understand how the system was evolving and trying to adapt to the reality that was surrounding them. And I think this third group was the one that had the most successful career. So I think that main skill that we need to unlearn is the predictability and the need of having a careful planning of what we want to do with this concept that we call career. I would prefer to substitute this word by professional journey or something like that, because the journey implies this kind of unpredictability in what is going to happen.
Yeah, thank you. I can add to that. That is what I work with as well, both with professors and particularly in careers. Stop planning, so because you will just get anxious if things doesn't work out the way you have planned. So it's better to live a little bit here and now and adapt to each situation and open up for opportunities, which is not easy if you are STEM. If you're now talking about STEM people, usually a bit more cautious, usually like to plan, good in math and physics, very analytical. We like to control things because we are trained to control and sort of be a little bit suspicious. Are the numbers correct or are they not? So we train skills to be good scientists that might not play into our favor when it comes to the career development. And Alex, is that something that you can see have impacted you, or do you see it among the people that you work with?
It's very interesting. I think along the same lines than Toni, and it reminds me of. I don't like the unlearning things because I'm a brain scientist. So I think the brain doesn't. Everything that happens to the brain, you prune in one side, but you grow in another. So I think flexibility is something that resonates more with this concept that you are bringing up. And it brings me back to when I was in and searching what could I do next. Where I went to a lot of talks and career events, and I met someone fascinating from the United Nations that said that the career you cannot predict what your career will be because the jobs of tomorrow don't exist today. And we live in a world like this that who have thought about data scientists like 10 years ago or 5 years ago. So if you go to university today, and when I went back to the classroom as a master's student in drug development, I met with my young colleagues that were immensely anxious about their career, and I wasn't that anxious when I was their age. And it was exactly because of that reason. Things evolved very quickly, and they all wanted an answer. Should I do this? Should I do that? Where would I find jobs? And I said, just follow your instinct, follow something that will make you happy, and because the careers are not. It's nothing is written in stone, and not on learning, but being. I think what has played into what skill as a scientist has been very good for me is that I'm not scared of learning something that seems difficult or new, because then I am very flexible. I'm learning carpentry now, for example. It has nothing to do with work, but I don't feel it is impossible to learn anything. So carpentry, for example, as a hobby.
You mentioned some words here that are very common that people mention, and that might be a little bit hard to define. And I will come back to you now, David, here, because they came from Alex, and I like to pick them a bit. It was both flexibility and happy. And I take the happy one for you, David, here. What do you think? If does everyone know what makes you happy? If I say, happy, what is happy for you? And if you don't know what makes you happy, how can you figure out what makes you happy?
Yeah, well, that's something that takes time, especially in a career. And that comes back to the word adaptability and so on, because I may have said at the beginning of my journey at EATRIS that I may not have been too happy until I started to try carve out my own space, which is the essence of a really good place to work, by the way, is that you have an opportunity to do that. And I would wish that for anybody. But of course, there's things that just don't make me happy, in any job or business, but you have to have your own thing, what makes you happy. And that takes time, it takes work. You always have to be happy with yourself, though. Whatever, you can, because that's the most important thing, confidence in yourself and be happy with yourself. And then you'll create a happy working environment for you and maybe for those around you as well. But it takes time. That's a big question.
It's hard work, yeah. And I'm glad you say it takes time. So for you guys now listening here, to be happy is a
But
life
actually,
job. Yeah.
maybe just one other comment. I think Tony said this to me. I think when I first met him in the first few weeks, he made a comment about if you're in a job, it does take time, but you have to also have some type of goalposts on it. That if you're constantly saying to yourself or questioning your position, you have to think about that, because there's nothing worse in this world than not being happy at your job. And I've had that experience and learned from it,
Yeah.
where your legs are so heavy that you're walking in to work. Or as someone said before, those kind of jobs where a Sunday night you're going, oh God, tomorrow I'm working. I don't have that at EATRIS. I'm lucky. I don't have the Sunday night feeling, even if it's a busy period. And I would wish that for everybody. I really would.
No, you have it, David, because you took responsibility. That you see, I meet people sitting in jobs, and I know they're going to listen to this podcast, and I know you will inspire when you say it, because I'm coaching people that come to me and I've been working 5 years in this job and I'm not happy. My legs are heavy. It's really hard to stand up in the morning, but people around me tell me I have a good job.
Yeah, well, everyone can say that when they're looking in. It's what goes on in your head and how you live your life and your job. But again, you have to. It's a cliche, and everyone that's listening to this, they have to be happy in what they're doing. It does take time, but you can't keep questioning what you're working at for ages. You'd be better off just delivering pizzas or doing anything. Working a bar on a nice island. Don't go and work in any job for too long that you're not happy in. Life is too short.
Life is too short for that. So thank you also, Alex, for bringing happy and flexibility up. I'm going to hang on that, because happy is indeed, and for you guys listening here now, it is something you need to work on, and everyone needs to work on the word happy, because it's only you who can define it. It's no one else that can define happy for you. But you, Patricia, I'm kicking in here flexibility, and it's because clients are coming to me and they say, I'm going to apply for this job, or they told me this job, I need to be flexible. So how can I tell them I am? And then, of course, I say, well, I can measure you statistically how flexible you are considering the pool of people. But first of all, we need to define what you think you mean by being flexible. So, Patricia, would you like to elaborate around what you define as being flexible from your point of view?
Yes.
When it comes to your career, if you put it that way.
Yeah, I think that by experience, I would define also myself as a flexible and adaptable person and professional, because since my early career stage, after obtaining a bachelor in biology in Bolivia, I had this strong desire to new countries, new cultures, new languages, and that's the idea that pushed me to explore and to look for opportunities outside my country, and also taking risks, because I didn't know where I was going to go at the end. But my desire also to improve my skills, to improve my knowledge. This is all the energy that pushed me to take new risks. And then when I started the PhD, I also had different challenges that I have to face in order to have good grades, to learn new subjects, to learn a lot of new techniques, and also to solve scientific problems. So as everybody, all my colleagues are scientists, and many of you had suffered of many problems during the PhD. This is a good way to test yourself, and to be aware that you can solve, that problems can be solved in time, and just you need to put dedication, love, a lot of love. You have to love. There is the motivation. I was lucky, and I consider myself also lucky, that I keep my motivation in the things that I'm doing. I like to learn. I like to understand what I'm doing, and I also like to have a good quality. For example, outputs. I like to be proud of my outputs, and that's for me a good like a good indicator of my success or my let's say it is a way how to measure how I'm doing in my job. So also when I change jobs, for example, from the scientific to the administrative or the project management, that was a challenge also for me, but was an opportunity to learn new skills. I went from the scientific to let's say to the scientific and also to the administrative financial management, and that gave me a lot of set of skills that now they are useful for my current job. So I think every time you face a challenge, depending on how you take that, that could be an opportunity to acquire a new, let's say, a new skill, a new know-how that will be useful for your future. And how I define that.
Yep. You're talking about learning here, and daring to learn and see things that you don't know you're going to be able to use, or you don't know why you do it. I think, when I listen to you here, you all have done that a little bit. You are curious, sort of, so you learn things, but maybe not always you know why. It is just sort of a feeling that you have that, why not? And that is something I like to also say, that, again, going back to many of the clients I have, they ask me, same questions that Alex said, what should I do and how can I do, and should I have that, and my CV that, and should I take that course? They want an answer, an answer. And I say, we need to take a step back here. How much money are you willing to pay? It's because it's also very common that, taking courses, I can take many courses, but I don't want to pay for them. Someone else has to pay for them. And I say, there is one thing, it is that you can take a course that is very expensive and you risk to lose the money because the course was not good. But it could also be a course that changed your life. So the input of the money will give you 10 times back. And this is the same thing with coaching packages. It is sort of like to have a controlling behavior of, if I do that, I want my receipt immediately. So what I'm asking you here is it so that you need in the future, if you want to jump into situation that you have done here, all four of you need to involve this sort of risk that you don't know if you're going to have a paycheck back on something that you do. You always take a risk that you did it, but it wasn't the best move at all. Or you take a course, or you pay for something, and it wasn't really planning out as the way you expected. But in the end, that was the key for being successful in the end. Is that something, Toni, you would like to elaborate around a little bit? This risk taking, not knowing if it's worth the money or not thing.
Right.
Maybe not the straightforward question, but it's a fluffy topic sort of as well. So
Yeah, well, I think the key word for answering this question for me is a word that Alex used, which is instinct. And I think in this career, in this profession, in this world of research, it happens also like in every important moment in life. I mean, there are moments where you have to make decisions, right? And I think that the guide for making this decision is to follow your instinct. And the instinct, it's something very interesting, because the instinct is that feeling your guts. Do you do what your gut is asking to do? Because that's the integration of where your brain, that knows all the context, all the pros, all the cons, on the analytical part, is bringing some information, but also this emotional side of your heart also is bringing all this contextual emotional information that relates to what you are, your values, your happiness, etc. So having this kind of emotional and this objective synthesis in the decision-making process, which means follow your instinct, is always the right way to do it. And it's something interesting because it's never objective. It's something that you cannot put in a piece of paper, but it's something that is this inner voice that is telling you this is the right way to go. And in the research domain, I think this is particularly important because we all always confront with lack of predictability, with mysteries, with this kind of uncertainty in the planification process. And I would like also to add something, because you've been using the concept of learning about things, right? Which is this wonderful thing about research. But we cannot forget that the research domain is something that gives you the amazing opportunity of learning from others, because it's an environment where you are exposed to people that come from different experiences, different cultures. Like, I mean, the four of us, we are a perfect example. And I mean, for me, it's a privilege to work in a place where I can learn from people every day, little things, sometimes big things, other times, from people like David, Patricia, or Alex. This is something that doesn't happen in other careers or in other environments, and this is why this job is so intoxicating, I would say.
It's intoxicating. And now you're coming into something else, and we still have 10 minutes left of the podcast here, and we're going to circle around a little bit around that if nothing else exciting comes up. But you really spotted it, instinct, and we could talk, it could be a podcast itself. What is that actually? But I believe that in the modern society, we have closed instinct. We don't listen to the instinct for some reason or two, and particularly in science, but also in the careers. I learn and experience that a lot. But we're going to talk about something, you mentioned it here, Toni. It is to learn from other people. And we talk a lot about team and team engagement. And they say, written in job ads and etc., that you need to be excellent in communication, in team and etc. And when I talk with my clients, they say, yeah, I'm excellent in communicating. And I say, no, we need to dig deeper into what you mean by excellent in communicating. On what level are you communicating? Because the feedback I get from companies is that many that comes out from a PhD or a postdoc or stayed very long time in academic environment is that they need to be better in communicating. Yeah. And then I say, now you need to help me to specify it. And it comes to what you talk about here, Toni. Communicate with your team members, learn from your team members, and communicating with your manager, without the manager coming to you to ask for information. So it's sort of sharing information constantly with your teams. And that for some, it doesn't come natural. So I like to go to you, Alex, and that, about, have you experienced, communication from your perspective? Would you like to share, for example, when you failed in that, according to, or what you had to learn about communicating to be stronger team member or manager, for example?
I love this topic actually, because I can see exactly what you are getting to, and I think I see all the others laughing. I think as an academic, and I'm sure that David can do it much more eloquently, with that, and the cat went there, and the cat followed that path, and the cat ended up in a tree, and the cat died. You bore people. Because we follow a logic of trying to explain the cause and the consequence and how you and try to be very factual and say how I prove. I didn't imagine that I have a proof or I've done an experiment for all these reasons why this is true, and you bored everyone. And my partner is from the finance world, and they start by the end, and we have conversations that are absolutely Kafkaesque, where my eyes are open like this, because my partner starts by the end, and I don't understand how we got there. And then I start by the beginning, and my partner got bored. So maybe that's a secret to happiness. But anyhow, so I think that this is one thing, and you learn it very quickly. I think if I were to give an advice to people that I want to transition from academia, we all speak the same language and understand each other, like explaining the long process. Take a, make it one of the first things you learn from the business environment. Go somewhere where you have to communicate quickly in 4 lines, a simple concept without telling everything. There are books, there are things, and it's a very easy skill and very, very helpful, because people, it's true. We have this way of communicating that doesn't work in business. Business starts by the end. The executive summary, give me the punchline. I don't care.
Punchline. Yeah.
And that's something you learn. Well, it takes a while to understand, but it's good when someone tells you, oh, please, give me 3 bullet points.
Yeah, and I just like it. The feedback I got when I went from academia to industry was, Tina, could you stop preaching? We're really tired of you preaching for us here. Could you just talk? And I remember I didn't get it, but now afterwards, many years afterwards, I'm sort of smiling because this is what I'm training PhDs in industry. And you are preaching and teaching a bit much. Maybe you should try to figure out the other person's perspective a bit more. So yes, and I agree with you. Punchlines many times and now to deliver the message. But David, I'd like to hear your perspective on this.
Well, communication, I mean, traditionally scientists have not been very good at it. I think we all know that. And I think it's interesting in EATRIS because I think we all have become better communicators because we deal with people every day. Because I think we're starting to realize science, medicine, it really is a people business. So we've had to come by default. We had to learn to be better. But we all have our own styles. You're right about, I myself probably talk too much. I know that. But it's something you learn. But it's about knowing how to communicate with the individual, I think, because everyone has their own style. And that's something that you learn with time. Sometimes you get it wrong, but you have to. There's individuals I've worked with that, I want to kill them sometimes, but you have to learn to just back off. You have to come up with your own techniques, but it's not easy. But it's something you get better at with time. And I think Toni, maybe you'll say maybe the elder statesman out of all of us, you're probably better than anyone at it that I know because you learn over time. But it's something, it's an issue because communication is everything in a team. If you don't have it, you're in a lot of trouble. You're in a lot of trouble. So, yeah.
And sometimes, communication, what many people forget is to listen. Measure
twice and saw once. That's what my father tells me.
We forget listening is a part of communication, isn't it? I'm smiling. Yeah, thank you, David. And Patricia, your perspective on the topic here.
Yeah, I think it's a key element in our daily life, in our daily work, especially now that we are working from different parts in the world, and we have to be very effective in communicating our ideas, instructions, tasks, whatever. So I think that nowadays everybody, all I think in all the professions, this is a key skill that all of us should develop very, very well. And I would say that for our work at EATRIS, it is a key point to be very good communicators, to understand very well the receivers of our messages, and also to think very well how we are going to structure our message. Yeah, especially for project managers like me, we have to be very, very good communicators for giving instructions, for example, for facilitating that things are done in the proper way, let's say, and that's a communication.
It is. And Toni, you are the last out here. There's the last question here in this podcast, but maybe a tricky one. I don't know. It's going to be exciting to hear how you answer it. But consider now, Toni, that I apply for a job to be part of your team. And I write in my resume, I'm excellent in communicating, a true team player, etc., etc. How would you test that?
Well, I think I will listen and I will explain how I feel and what I want to do and what's my plan. And I would encourage that other person to create this kind of common space where we are sharing our thoughts. And if I detect that chemistry that does exist in this process of sharing how we feel and there is honesty and transparency, for me that means communication. Because communication is a skill that you also have to learn. I mean, when you start, working with someone else, you need to understand for communicating, for creating this common space where you feel you are sharing part of yourself. You need to understand that the context of that person and the personality, and this is a chemistry that needs to be built. And this is essential for having an efficient teamwork, because I mean, in a complex in complex organizations like us, these functions do exist and appear all the time. So if I know that David, Patricia, and Alex, and they do it all the time, this is why, for instance, working with these guys is just great, because I know what that something worries them and it's not working. They are going to put this openly on the table, and that allows me to work in an environment of trust, and that makes work more efficient, and also that helps creating is also a human relationship with the other, which is part of this kind of learning process.
So I hear something very important here from you, Tony, and thank you for that. That it's be yourself. And you have to share more than your technology and professional you in an interview. You have to show who you are actually, and there is nothing like, you know, this is, I like to tell you listeners, listen to what Tony said. It's about being you. They're going to recruit you. They're not going to recruit your technical skills. They can read that in the resume, but on the interview you have to share who you are, what you want, and it's not about a perfect answer many times, and laughing is fully okay. I'm quite sure, Tony, it would be a fantastic and amazing experience to be interviewed by you. I feel that. Yeah. So, because talking about yourself, your dreams, and also learning from a person like you on an interview is an experience itself. So thank you a lot, Toni, Patricia, David, and Alex, for the roundtable discussion here, because this is Tina Persson from PhD Career Stories. And I hope you enjoyed the podcast. And what I would say here finally is that you can learn more about all other topics that we have recorded, and we have many new interesting topics upcoming on the podcast here. You can follow us on our webpage, phdcareerstories.com. You find us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, and a little bit on Twitter. And never hesitate to contact us if you know someone or an organization that you think deserve to be on a podcast. And we promise, me and my team, PhD Career Stories, to take action on that. So with that said, thank you a lot. It was absolutely amazing having you on board, and have a wonderful day, and speak soon.